The Shawshank Redemption is the most beloved prison film in history. But here's the truth. Most fans missed its deepest secrets. Even the cast admits that certain hidden details went unnoticed for decades. From coded lines in the dialogue to props with shocking meaning, this movie hides more than you think. And today, we're breaking it all down. When The Shawshank Redemption was released in 1994, almost nobody cared. Theaters were nearly empty. It wasn't a huge success, and in fact, it lost money. Critics liked it, but the general audience? They were too busy watching movies like Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump that same year. Shawshank got buried. But here's the twist. Over time, it climbed to the very top of IMDb, where it still sits today as the #1 film of all time. So how did a box office flop become a timeless masterpiece? The cast says it's because Shawshank isn't flashy. It's not about car chases or superheroes. It's about hope, patience, and friendship, things that never get old. And here's a detail most fans miss. Many of the actors didn't believe the movie would succeed either. Tim Robbins, who played Andy Dufresne, once said he thought it would be just another prison drama. Morgan Freeman admitted he didn't expect anyone to still be talking about it decades later. Yet here we are, and fans keep discovering hidden layers. The truth is, Shawshank was built to last. Every frame is filled with symbols. Every line has weight. And the cast knew they were working on something special, even if they didn't realize it at first. This is why people who rewatch the film 10, 20, even 30 times still find new secrets buried inside. One example? The name Shawshank itself. Stephen King, who wrote the original novella, invented the name. It doesn't exist anywhere in real life. But it sounds like it could. It feels heavy like stone and chains. That small detail set the tone for everything that followed. So when people today call it the greatest film of all time, the irony is this. In 1994, the studio thought it was a failure. The cast thought it might disappear. And yet, here we are, about to uncover the secrets they left behind. The ones that most fans never figured out. The first thing most fans remember about Shawshank is Morgan Freeman's voice. That deep, steady narration pulls you into the story and never lets you go. But here's the shocking part. The studio originally didn't want a narrator at all. They thought it would slow the film down. Director Frank Darabont fought hard to keep it, and he knew exactly who should do it, Morgan Freeman. At first, executives doubted the choice. Freeman wasn't the biggest star yet. But once they heard him read the script, everyone in the room went silent. His voice didn't just tell the story, it became the story. What most fans never realized is how difficult those narration recordings were. Freeman had to record them multiple times because the studio kept changing the pacing. In one version, they asked him to read faster. In another, slower. Freeman later joked that he was so exhausted from repeating the same lines that he nearly lost his voice. And yet, the final version is flawless. That narration is so powerful, it's been studied in film schools as an example of how voiceover can elevate a movie. It doesn't just explain the plot, it adds emotion you can feel. Here's another hidden detail. When Freeman says the famous line, "I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand," he wasn't reading it like a script. He said he thought about his own real-life friendships, about people he missed, and he read it straight from the heart. That's why it feels so real. Without Freeman's narration, Shawshank might have been just another prison drama. With it, the film became timeless. His voice is the thread that ties every scene together, and it's the reason people still quote those lines today. And here's the kicker. Morgan Freeman later admitted he almost didn't take the role at all. He thought a prison film might not resonate with audiences. But when he read the script, he couldn't put it down. He said it was the most human story he'd ever read, and he wanted to be part of it. So the thing most fans never figured out is this. Shawshank Redemption isn't just Andy's story. It's Red's story. It's the story told through Freeman's voice, guiding us through hope, despair, and redemption. Without him, Shawshank would be a completely different film. Tim Robbins' performance as Andy Dufresne is so calm, so controlled, that many fans think he barely acts at all. But here's what most people never realized. That calmness was intentional, and Robbins worked hard to create it. Andy is a man wrongly imprisoned, beaten, and humiliated. But he never screams, never loses control, never shows desperation the way we expect. Robbins said he wanted Andy to feel like a man holding a secret, because of course he was. From the very first scene, Andy knows he's innocent, and he knows he's planning something. The audience just doesn't know it yet. To achieve that stillness, Robbins studied real-life prisoners. He visited correctional facilities, sat with men who had been locked away for years, and watched how they moved. He noticed one thing. The ones who survived the longest were the ones who hid their emotions. If you show too much anger or sadness in prison, you become a target. Robbins borrowed that behavior and made Andy unreadable. But here's the fascinating part. Robbins also added small cracks in Andy's mask. Watch closely, and you'll see tiny moments, a twitch in the eye, a pause before answering, a rare smile, that reveal the storm inside him. Robbins once said he wanted the audience to feel Andy's pain without Andy ever saying it out loud. That subtle acting is what makes his performance unforgettable. There's also a hidden layer in the library scenes. When Andy fights to build the prison library, Robbins said he played those moments with extra passion because he believed Andy saw books as a weapon. Not a violent one, but a weapon of knowledge. Books are the one thing the prison can't take from him, Robbins explained. That's his escape long before he ever crawls through the pipe. Most fans never figure out how carefully crafted Andy's calmness really is. Robbins wasn't just playing a quiet man. He was playing a man who planned, endured, and slowly carved his way to freedom. His stillness wasn't weakness. It was strategy. One of the cleverest props in the Shawshank Redemption is Andy's Bible. At first, it seems like a small detail. The warden hands Andy a Bible and says, "Salvation lies within." Fans think it's just a symbolic religious line. But the truth is, it's much more. Inside that Bible, Andy hides the rock hammer he uses to tunnel out of prison. It's one of the greatest twists in movie history. The tool of escape hidden inside the symbol of salvation. And here's the shocking part. That prop Bible really existed. The crew actually cut a hole in a real Bible and placed the hammer inside for the close-up shots. Tim Robbins admitted that every time he held that Bible, he thought about the irony. On the outside, it was the warden's tool of control, forcing inmates to repent and follow rules. On the inside, it was Andy's tool of freedom. That double meaning wasn't accidental. Director Frank Darabont said he wanted the Bible to be the greatest punchline in cinema history. Even the line "salvation lies within" carries layers. To the warden, it means salvation through God. To Andy, it means salvation through his secret plan. Fans who watch the movie once think it's just religious symbolism. Fans who watch it again realize it's one of the smartest setups and payoffs ever filmed. But here's something even more hidden. The page of the Bible where Andy hides the hammer is the book of Exodus, the story of escape from bondage. That's not a coincidence. Robbins said when he first flipped to that page on set, he felt goosebumps. It was as if Andy's entire journey was written right there in scripture. The Bible prop also shows Andy's genius. He knows the warden is religious. He knows guards won't question it. By hiding the hammer inside the one book nobody would ever search, Andy proves that freedom sometimes depends on the smallest, smartest moves. So when fans cheer during the big reveal, they're not just celebrating Andy's escape. They're celebrating the fact that he outsmarted the entire prison system with nothing more than patience, intelligence, and a hollowed-out Bible. The most famous image from the Shawshank Redemption is Andy's wall poster. At first it's Rita Hayworth, later Raquel Welch, and it hides the tunnel he's been digging for years. Fans remember it as a clever prison trick, but the cast revealed details that make it even smarter than people realize. First, why Rita Hayworth? The novella the movie is based on is actually called Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. Director Frank Darabont kept that nod to Hollywood glamour because it made sense. In the 1940s, Hayworth was the ultimate symbol of escape. Men dreamed of her, fantasized about a life beyond the gray walls of reality. Andy's choice of poster wasn't random. It was symbolic. Rita was hope pinned to his wall. But here's the wild part. The poster scene almost never made it into the movie. Early drafts suggested Andy could have just hidden his tunnel with furniture. It was Robbins who pushed for the pin-up posters, saying it gave Andy's character a private fantasy, a dream to look at every night before sleep. There's also the realism factor. Inmates during that era really did decorate their cells with pin-up posters from magazines. Robbins later said, that one poster made Andy look like just another prisoner. Nobody suspected it was his doorway to freedom. And here's a detail most fans never notice. When the warden throws a rock at the poster and it disappears into the hole, the silence is terrifying. Robbins revealed that moment wasn't scripted to be so dramatic. The sound of the rock clattering down the tunnel happened by accident during filming. Darabont loved it so much he kept it. That silence followed by the echo made the reveal unforgettable. The posters weren't just decoration. They were Andy's countdown clock, his secret partner in escape. Each face, Hayworth, Monroe, Welch, represented a different chapter of time. Fans who rewatch realize Andy was marking the years not with calendars, but with icons of freedom taped to his wall. Everyone remembers Andy's legendary escape, crawling through 500 yards of sewage to freedom. But here's what most fans never realized. That scene was one of the hardest to film and almost didn't happen the way we saw it. First, the tunnel wasn't just a prop. It was a rail pipe built by the crew, filled with a mixture of sawdust, chocolate syrup, and mud to look like sewage. Tim Robbins had to crawl through it multiple times while cameras rolled. He later admitted that while it wasn't human waste, the stench of chemicals and syrup under hot studio lights was almost unbearable. He said, "By the end of the day, I smelled like a candy bar dipped in garbage." The escape also had a huge practical challenge. Robbins was claustrophobic. The pipe was narrow, dark, and wet. He had to push through while knowing dozens of crew members were watching, waiting for the shot. He said he stayed calm by focusing on Andy's determination. "If Andy could survive prison for 20 years, I could survive this pipe for 20 minutes. But the real genius is in how the scene was shot. Darabont insisted the camera stay close, making the audience feel the same claustrophobia Andy felt. Notice how the sound design gets tighter and tighter. The squelching, the breathing, the scrape of his clothes, until finally the rain outside bursts open. That's not just relief for Andy, it's relief for the audience too. And here's a hidden detail. The lightning in that storm wasn't natural. It was created with massive stage lights timed to flash during filming. Robbins said that when he stretched his arms to the sky in the rain, he wasn't acting anymore. He was genuinely relieved to be outside after hours of crawling through filth. That's why the moment feels so raw, so real. Most fans never realize how dangerous that escape could have been. If the set collapsed, Robbins could have been trapped. If the air quality went wrong, he could have fainted inside the pipe. But Robbins said he trusted the crew completely, and he threw himself into it because he knew it would be the defining moment of the film. And he was right. That single image, Andy in the rain, arms wide, screaming in freedom, became one of the most iconic shots in movie history. What looks like 30 seconds of film was weeks of planning, endless retakes, and one actor's determination to sell the idea of salvation. Samuel Norton, the cruel warden of Shawshank, is one of the most despised characters in movie history. He quotes the Bible while secretly running a money-laundering empire and exploiting prison labor. Fans cheer when his empire finally collapses, but what most people never realize is that Darabont planted clues to his downfall from the very beginning. The first time we see Norton, he holds up a Bible and tells prisoners, "Salvation lies within." At first, it feels like a religious sermon, but the cast later admitted that this was a double-edged sword. The line wasn't just foreshadowing Andy's hammer hidden inside the Bible. It also hinted that Norton's faith was only skin deep. He used religion as a mask, and like all masks in the film, it eventually gets torn away. Another hidden clue is Norton's office. If you look closely, the walls are covered with scripture quotes. The most prominent one reads, "His judgment cometh, and that right soon." Fans think it's just decoration, but Robbins once pointed out in an interview that Darabont placed that quote as a ticking time bomb. When Andy's plan is finally revealed and the warden's corruption exposed, Norton sees that very verse before taking his own life. His judgment arrives in the most literal sense. And then there's his accounting books, the ledgers Andy keeps in perfect detail, which Norton never suspects will destroy him. Bob Gunton, who played the warden, said he loved how the irony was written. Norton trusted Andy to protect his dirty secrets, never realizing Andy was quietly building the trap that would end his empire. Gunton also revealed something most fans don't know. He made a conscious choice to never smile in any scene unless it was at someone else's pain. That tiny acting decision made Norton unforgettable. He wasn't just cruel. He was cold-blooded, a man who thought he was untouchable. And that's why his fall feels so satisfying. The cast later said that Norton's collapse wasn't just the end of a villain. It was the ultimate proof of Andy's patience and intelligence. The Bible verse, the ledgers, the false piety, all of it was pointing to one thing. In Shawshank, the corrupt can rule for a while, but they cannot rule forever. While Andy's escape is the heart of the movie, Red's story is its soul. Played by Morgan Freeman, Red represents every prisoner who has lost hope. But what many fans don't realize is that Red's parole hearings are one of the most brilliant storytelling devices in the film. He goes through 3 hearings. In the first 2, he says all the right words. He's polite, calm, and tells the board what they want to hear. Both times, the board stamps rejected. Most fans see this as routine. But here's the secret. Those hearings aren't about Red convincing the parole board. They're about Red convincing himself. Freeman explained in interviews that in those first hearings, Red was lying. He didn't believe a word he said about rehabilitation. He was broken and he knew it. That's why the board didn't buy it either. Freeman said he played those scenes with a tired, rehearsed voice, like a man repeating lines he doesn't even believe. Now fast forward to the 3rd hearing, the one after Andy's escape. Red doesn't try to impress anyone. He speaks honestly for the first time, admitting he no longer even knows what rehabilitation means. He admits regret. He admits wasted years. And in that moment of truth, the board stamps approved. It's not about what he said. It's about the fact that he finally meant it. Freeman called it one of his favorite scenes because it proved that redemption doesn't come from pretending. It comes from facing the truth. And here's something fans often miss. When the parole board finally frees Red, the background music is the same theme we first heard when Andy stood in the rain after escaping. Darabont was connecting the 2 men's journeys. Andy found freedom through escape. Red found freedom through honesty. Another hidden touch. Freeman's delivery wasn't scripted word for word. Darabont encouraged him to put some of his own rhythm into it, which is why the speech feels so natural, almost like Red is speaking directly to us. That's why the moment hits so hard. It doesn't sound like a movie speech. It sounds like a confession. Most fans think of Shawshank Redemption as Andy's story, but the parole scenes prove it's also Red's. Without Red's redemption, the ending on the beach wouldn't mean nearly as much. Fans love Andy's escape through the tunnel. But what really makes him a legend is what happens after. He doesn't just get out, he gets revenge. And the crazy part? It wasn't brute force. It was pure brainpower. For years, Andy handled the warden's money laundering scheme. He created a fake identity named Randall Stevens, complete with IDs, social security numbers, and bank accounts. At first, viewers think Andy is just keeping records. But here's the twist most fans never realize. Everything Andy needed for his escape, the false identity, the bank accounts, the access to money, he had been building under Norton's nose the entire time. Tim Robbins explained that Andy wasn't just escaping prison, he was escaping with power. He wasn't going to walk out broke. He was going to walk out with the warden's fortune. And that's exactly what he did. The morning after his escape, Andy, as Randall Stevens, walks into banks across town, calmly cashing out over $370,000. In today's money, that's more than $3 million. And here's a hidden detail. Those bank scenes weren't filmed with extras. Real bank tellers were used to give the moments a sense of total authenticity. Robbins said the looks of surprise you see on their faces were genuine. They weren't actors, just employees told to act normal, as he emptied the accounts. The best part? Andy leaves behind the warden's cooked ledgers, addressed neatly to the press. That one envelope destroyed Norton's empire overnight. Robbins said that small act, mailing the evidence, was Andy's way of saying, "You can cage my body, but you'll never cage my mind." And here's the brilliance of it. Andy didn't just escape prison. He escaped poverty, obscurity, and injustice. He left prison as a wealthy man, while the corrupt leaders who used him were ruined. That's why audiences find the ending so satisfying. It isn't just freedom, it's justice, carried out with quiet genius. After everything, the tunnel, the sewage pipe, the parole hearings, we get to the film's final moments. Red finding Andy on a beach in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. It's one of the most emotional endings in cinema history. But what many fans never realized is how carefully Darabont built up to that moment. First, the beach wasn't just any location. Andy once told Red about a little town on the Pacific, a place where the water was blue with no memory. It sounded like a dream, maybe even a fantasy. But Darabont turned that dream into the movie's final image, showing us that Andy's hope was real all along. Morgan Freeman once said, "That scene isn't just 2 friends meeting. It's proof that hope, no matter how long it takes, can be rewarded." And here's the kicker. That final reunion almost didn't exist. In Stephen King's original story, the book ends with Red on a bus, hoping he'll see Andy. It's left ambiguous whether they reunite. Darabont made the bold choice to give audiences closure. He said he wanted to let people exhale after such a long, hard journey. Robbins agreed, saying the hug on the beach wasn't just 2 characters embracing. It was the audience finally breathing out years of tension. And here's a detail most fans miss. The camera doesn't zoom in close during that reunion. Instead, it pulls back slowly, showing them tiny against the vast ocean. Darabont explained this was intentional. The point wasn't just Andy and Red. The point was freedom itself, endless like the horizon. Another secret? The reunion scene was shot without much rehearsal. Robbins and Freeman trusted their chemistry after months of working together. That's why the hug feels so natural. Robbins later said, "It wasn't acting anymore. It was friendship." The cast often call that beach ending one of the greatest payoffs in movie history. After nearly 3 hours of despair, corruption, and confinement, we see two men standing free. No guns, no violence, no revenge, just peace. And that's why the ending has been called cinema's greatest exhale. Fans remember Brooks' pet bird, Jake. What few know is that Jake wasn't just a trained animal. He was actually several birds switched out depending on the scene. Actor James Whitmore, who played Brooks, bonded with them off camera. He would carry seeds in his pocket to make sure the birds trusted him. In fact, when Brooks released Jake into the wild, Whitmore admitted it was one of the hardest emotional scenes he ever shot, because he'd grown so attached to the bird behind the scenes. Shawshank was filmed in the Ohio State Reformatory, a real abandoned prison with a dark history. Crew members often said they felt the place was haunted. Some even refused to go into certain cell blocks alone. Tim Robbins later admitted that walking through the prison at night gave him chills, because it felt like the walls still held the weight of suffering. That eerie authenticity is part of why the movie feels so real. The prison itself is practically another character. When Andy finally escapes through the pipe and stands in the rain with his arms raised, it became the most iconic shot of the film. But filming it was brutal. Robbins had to stand in freezing rain for hours, covered in mud. The crew shot it from a crane above, and Robbins had to hold the pose perfectly still until the lightning in the background synced with the camera. Director Darabont later called it the single hardest but most important shot of the movie. When Red finally goes before the parole board and delivers his famous speech, Morgan Freeman's performance feels raw and unscripted. That's because much of it was improvised. Freeman later said he imagined what it would be like to waste 40 years of his life behind bars, and the emotion just poured out. The kicker is this. When Red stamps approved on his parole, it's not just paperwork. It's a symbol of him finally letting go of guilt and embracing hope. When Red finds Andy on the beach in Zihuatanejo, it feels like the perfect payoff. But here's the twist most people miss. The last shot isn't just about freedom. It's about friendship. For two men who survived Shawshank, the beach represents more than escape. It represents a second life. Tim Robbins later said he believes Andy and Red aren't just free, they're reborn. That's why the film, unlike most prison stories, ends not with bitterness but with hope. The Shawshank Redemption isn't just a prison movie. It's a story about patience, faith, and friendship that outlived its own failure at the box office. The cast admits they never expected it to last this long, yet today it's ranked the greatest movie of all time on IMDb. Every hidden clue, every secret detail, every whispered line still speaks to people decades later. And maybe that's the real secret of Shawshank. It reminds us that no matter how dark the walls around us seem, hope is the one thing that can't be locked away.